Yes, someday. Even after reaching my second spring of high school, that someday still had yet to come into bloom. I drank from my coffee cup until it was half empty. Perhaps because no one had showed up yet, Koto-san started talking to me again. Did Nanami-senpai have something to do? That's what she said. But someone might be confessing their love to her again, I replied jokingly. But it was a possibility. Have you ever been confessed to, Seki-senpai? Koto-san leaned towards me slightly, full of curiosity. When I heard the word confessed, I felt a slight pang run through the back of my head. I couldn't think of that as a confession anymore. I suppose you could say I have. I had experienced one or two more confessions since entering high school, though it didn't happen to me as often as it did to Toko. Of course, I rejected them on the spot. They hadn't even been people I interacted much with, and their names and faces were now hazy. Oh, I knew it! You knew it? The stuff I said about Nanami-senpai applies to you too. You're cool, you get your work done, and you're beautiful. Koto-san seemed delighted at first, and then grew embarrassed by saying those things in front of the person she was talking about. She tried to play it off by looking away and smiling ambiguously. You're not going to tell me I'm kind too, I said to tease her. Koto-san kept her eyes turned away from me. I'm sorry. It was a joke. I really wasn't all that kind anyway. If she had told me I was, I would probably have replied that she wasn't much of a judge of character. Koto-san brought the coffee cup to her lips and paused. Then she turned her eyes back toward me. When you were confessed to, how did you feel? So she's going to keep this conversation going, I thought. She was more engrossed by the topic of romance than I had expected. But then again, I corrected myself. I didn't know much about Koto-san. When it came to this underclassman, I couldn't distinguish what was unexpected and what wasn't. Conflicted. Conflicted? About how to best turn them down without hurting their feelings. My own experience naturally made me take on that attitude. Koto-san smiled slightly. You really are kind, upper-class man. I was just being respectful, that's all. I respected the feeling of caring for someone, because those feelings now motivated my every move. I knew all too well the anxiety and conflict that accompanied them, so I couldn't be too blunt. Even if I couldn't reciprocate their feelings, I wanted to answer in a way that wouldn't make those feelings feel dismissed. Do you like anyone, upper-class-man? It's a secret. Though saying that it was, basically confirming that I did. I drew the line at stating it outright. And you? Do you have someone you like? I'd asked, thinking that she would reply coyly, like I did, but Koto-san's lips pursed stiffly. She frowned unhappily for a moment, and then answered in a matter-of-fact voice. I don't. I see. I wondered whether she was aware of the expression on her face. Why did her eyes look pleading, as though she were lost in an unknown land? To be unhappy about not having someone you liked was an interesting new perspective. At the time, my surprise at her reaction was enough to make me feel that she was quite an amusing underclassman. But it didn't take long for me to revise my opinion entirely, ever since the day that Toko chose her. It happened during the student council election the next month. President Kusso was coming to an end of his term as student council president and was transferring his duties. In the process, we talked about the next election, and I was just about to turn the conversation towards what Tuko and I would do when I heard Tuko address someone. I'm going to need a campaign manager, someone to help me with election activities and such. Could you do that for me, Koto-san? Tuko's voice was light, without a single ulterior motive behind it. I think I may have been even more surprised than Koto-san, to whom the request had been posed. It was a piercing shock, as though Tuko had abruptly started speaking fluently in a language I'd never heard before. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking straight at Koto-san. In that moment, I wasn't the one standing by Tuko's side. The voices of the president and Maki-kun, who had been standing nearby, stopped reaching my ears. All my life, I've been helpless when it comes to coping with unexpected. I think I'm generally quick to understand once I overcome my initial shock. But being clever also means that you have to be aware of what's going on around you. People adapt to their environments, whether for better or worse. Perhaps I, too, had gone soft while at Tuko's side. Was I lacking something necessary for Tuko to choose me? Had I neglected something? Or was Tuko the one who had changed? I was confident that I had observed Tuko more closely than anyone else had. If a change like that had occurred in her, my heart told me I couldn't have missed it. Even if I hadn't noticed it right away, I would surely have cottoned on with time. And since I hadn't been able to do that yet, it must have happened recently. Just recently. Just a short time ago. If there was something that had changed Tuko, then... I looked shakily at Tuko, and then at Koito-san. Koito-san remained unable to answer, staring at Tuko as though trying to understand her intent.